Today we will be filming a video to show how to trim an International 420.
Welcome to the Yacht Club of Greece in Piraeus. My name is Nick Drougas and I work with the International 420 class as a coach, helping to run development programs around the world.
We will look at the boat setup both on shore and on the water. Firstly, we need to find the basic setting. Each sail loft creates its own tuning guide to help us set up our boat to sail fast. These guides include information on how to set up the mast step, spreaders, rake and prebend. To measure the mast step's position, we project the back of the mast step on the side with the help of a ruler. We set the measuring tape on it and measure to the back of the boat. The mast step position varies depending on our mast stiffness, our weight and our sail shape. The spreaders are key to supporting the mast and controlling the mast shape. To measure the spreader's length, we set the measuring tape under the spreader bracket at the widest point at the side of the mast, up to the middle of the shroud wire. Make sure the headstay is the required length, otherwise you will have difficulties to pin down for heavier conditions. Push the mast all the way to the back to stretch the headstay wire to its maximum. The widest part of the mast should be inside the aft point of the mast gate. First, we raise the measuring tape by pulling the main halyard up the mast until the measuring tape shows 490 centimeters at the gooseneck's white band. We pull on tension while looking at the tension meter, which stands at the shrouds. The mast begins to bend and moves forward at the mast gate. We continue to pull on tension until it reaches 235 kilos on the shroud. We then measure to the stern, and this gives the actual measurement of the rake. We then check the rake, and if it is 1 centimeter more than 610 centimeters, we pin down. Conversely, if we reach a lower rake than 608 centimeters, we pin up. A pinhole change gives us an approximate 3 centimeter difference. Always double-check the fast pins on both sides are in the same hole. Set a reference tension mark at the mast by the hook of the tension. After we set the rake, we continue by making the spreaders smile. We measure them both to be equal at the required happy height, and then we secure them with a thread, so we do not have to measure them every single time we pull on tension. We stand on the side of the boat, we close one eye, and with the other eye we line up the 2 shrouds below the spreaders. We continue looking at the upper part of the spreaders to check whether the shrouds are in line. If the other side is further forward, we close that side, or we open it if it is further back. It is useful to set a reference mark on the mast to show which way to turn the adjusters to open and close the spreader position. Now the spreaders are in the required position, with equal height and symmetrical fore and aft. The only thing remaining is to close or open the spreaders to reach the suggested mast bend. We measure the bend of the mast with the halyard touching the track of the mainsail at the gooseneck level, and we continue by measuring the distance between the mast and the inside of the halyard at the spreaders level. We pin down to the next hole and we open approximately 1 turn on the spreaders, pulling the tension to the required number following the tuning guide for medium setting. We measure the prebend, and if needed, we make fine adjustments to reach the required prebend. We should try to center the mast in the mast gate and fill up any gaps with mylar or Teflon tape. Similarly, any gaps between the rudder head and the foil should be filled in the same way. Flip the boat onto its side with full tension on and with the hull of the boat facing the wind. Be careful to make sure that the gunwale and the chain plate of the boat are not touching the body of the trolley at any point to avoid damage. Wobble the centerboard sideways, and if there is a lot of movement, any space between the centerboard and the centerboard case should be filled with mylar or Teflon tape. The jib as a sail has two disadvantages compared to a mainsail. Firstly, the jib is attached only at the luff to the boat, and secondly, it partly overlaps the mainsail. This makes the trim of the jib difficult because we cannot clearly see the shape of the leech in the foot while we are positioned on the windward side of the boat. Over the years, sailors and coaches have developed several ways to adjust the jib more accurately and repeat a nice setup. Together, we will go through these useful tips. With E-tape, we set two reference marks approximately 12 cm and 16 cm from the shroud to trim the jib's leech properly. These marks will help us to communicate about the jib's trim between the crew and coach. We set several marks on the front of the boat where the jib foot touches the deck. These marks will help us to control the jib foot depth quite accurately, so we can also easily repeat the same trimming. Cunningham. The main reason for using the Cunningham is to adjust the position of the deepest point of the sail. In light wind, there should be a few short wrinkles at the front of the sail. As the wind increases, we progressively tighten the Cunningham to remove the wrinkles. In strong wind, we pull the Cunningham tight. While we sail upwind, once we find a good trim of the jib, we set a reference point with a marker just after the cleat so it can be visible to us. A better and more precise way to trim the jib is to stick numbered tape 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the boat. On the jib sheet, we mark a point with vivid colour marker. While hiking, it is then easier to look at the numbering and set the proper tension at the foot and leech of the jib. When sailing upwind, we trim the windward jib sheet to help us make the jib more powerful. With the help of a permanent marker, we also set up a reference mark just after the cleat for easy setting. The mainsail is quite an easy sail to set up, but needs more time for adjustments. Two sides of the mainsail are attached, the luff to the mast and the foot to the boom, and that makes it easier to control. Another reason this makes the fine setup of the main more straightforward is that both of the crew members can look at it and have a clear opinion. The mainsail requires more time to adjust because there are several systems, like the boom vang, bridle, outhaul, Cunningham and CHOCKS, that can be adjusted, and we will explain these next. CHOCKS are a useful system to control the mast bend. By adding CHOCKS, you force the mast to move backwards, which reduces the mast bend mostly below the spreader's bracket. Negative CHOCKS are useful in very light winds. If we want to reduce the depth, we remove 1 or 2 CHOCKS and we pull the rope of the negative CHOCKS to force the mast to fill the gap, which increases the mast bend mostly below the spreader level. In heavy air, we keep the rope in the cleat and tight, preventing the mast from breaking. The bridle is used to keep the boom as close as possible to the center of the boat. You adjust the height of it by pulling or releasing the strops within the clam cleat. You always try to keep the strops equal by measuring them at the center of the boat, or by having a reference mark on the rope. The main sheet controls the position of the boom and how far away or close to the center of the boat it will be. Additionally, in light conditions, it controls the leech tension of the mainsail. This small rope controls the distance between the mainsail luff and the back of the mast at the gooseneck level, while the rest of the luff is in the mast track. By adjusting the tack tie, we can affect the depth of the area around the tack by approximately 70 centimeters. Outhaul is controlling the depth of the mainsail at the lower part, below the spreader level. OUTHAUL also affects the angle of the leech at the lower batten. With the spreaders, you can control the depth of the middle of the mainsail. By opening them, you can make the sail deeper, and the opposite when you close them. The boom vang is a very useful system to control the leech tension for light, medium, and up to very heavy air. However, by pulling on it, a large part of the sail becomes flatter. The main reason for using the Cunningham is to adjust the position of the deepest point of the sail. When the wind flow starts to increase around the mainsail, slowly the deepest point of the draft moves backwards compared to the ideal position. By pulling the Cunningham, you move the draft forward. We hope you found this video useful, but if you have further questions, you can contact us via media@420sailing.org.